You wake up in Germany 1923 with 1 million marks in your pocket. Yesterday, that was a fortune. Today, at the bakery downstairs, a loaf of bread costs 200 billion. Your million wouldn't buy the crumbs off the counter. Here's how deep the hole goes. In 1914, $1 cost about 4 marks. By November 1923, $1 costs over 4 trillion marks. Not billion, trillion. The same money divided by a trillion in 9 years. So stand in that bakery holding your worthless million and ask yourself, what would you do? Then ask a better question. A currency doesn't just drop dead. Somebody kills it. The suspects, a peace treaty, a central banker, a foreign army, a tycoon getting rich off the wreckage. We're going to interrogate them one by one. Who killed the German mark? Start where detectives always start. The last day, the victim was healthy. August 4th, 1914, the first week of Germany's war. That same day, new banking laws quietly cut the mark loose from gold. Gold payments are suspended, yet new loan banks issue paper backed by nothing, and in the Reichsbank's books, that paper still counts as gold. The magic show begins on day 1. Then, the bill for the war itself. Every government has 2 options: taxes, which voters hate, or borrowing, which voters don't understand. The Kaiser and Parliament choose borrowing, unanimously, and cover less than 14% of the war's cost with taxes. 9 times, the government passes the hat, and ordinary Germans buy war bonds, roughly 97 billion marks of them. You're patriotic. You buy too. The Treasury Secretary spells out the plan. The enemies started this war, so let them drag this lead weight of billions through the decades. Germany loses. By the end, the money in circulation has grown nearly 7-fold, and prices have more than doubled. The gun is loaded. But wartime inflation is not yet hyperinflation. Someone still has to pull the trigger. Enter suspect number 2, the peace. May 5th, 1921. The Allies hand Germany the London ultimatum. Reparations set at 132 billion gold marks, about $33 billion, and 6 days to accept, or troops occupy the industrial heartland. To you, it sounds like a life sentence. Detectives footnote, though, only about 50 billion is actually scheduled to be paid. The biggest slice has no interest and no timetable, political theater for the newspapers back home, many historians now say. Still, the real bill is real. 2 billion gold marks a year, plus about a quarter of the value of German exports. In the summer of 1921, Germany makes its first billion gold mark payment, largely by printing paper marks and using them to buy foreign currency at any price, a bit like paying your rent by selling your own IOUs on the street corner. The mark slides from under 100 to the dollar to 330 by year's end. Case closed then. Not so fast. By the winter of 1919 to 1920, before anyone even knew the reparations number, the mark had already lost 90% of its value against the dollar. The treaty beat a patient who was already sick, and the following summer, the patient takes a bullet. Literally. June 24th, 1922. You're in Berlin. Walter Rathenau, Germany's foreign minister, rides to work in an open car, the same route every morning. Another car pulls alongside. Men from a far-right terror group open fire at close range. He dies in the street. He is murdered because he is Jewish, and because he is the face of the policy of actually paying the reparations. Millions pour into the streets to mourn him. The markets mourn differently. He was the man telling the world that Germany could hold itself together. With him gone, confidence snaps. In midsummer 1922, a dollar costs around 320 marks. By December, 7,400. For the case file, hyperinflation begins in the summer of 1922, not 1923. Shops reprice weekly, then daily. You spend your pay the day it arrives. The word savings starts to sound like your grandfather's vocabulary. And just when you think things cannot accelerate any further, a foreign army crosses the border. January 11th, 1923. French and Belgian troops occupy the Ruhr, the coal and steel heart of Germany, over missed reparations deliveries, not money this time, timber and coal. Around 70,000 soldiers, up to 100,000 at the peak, hold the region. Berlin cannot fight back militarily, so it orders something remarkable: passive resistance. Miners, railwaymen, civil servants, everyone in the Ruhr walks off the job, and the state promises to pay their wages while they do nothing. Noble, defiant, and completely unfunded. So the wages come off a printing press. The fire was already burning. The Ruhr turns it into a firestorm. Your cousin in Essen is paid to stay home, in money that loses value while it's handed over. That winter, you learn the first rule of 1923. Money is ice in your hand. It buys today what it will not buy tomorrow. By summer, the ice is steam. But the occupation didn't invent the printing press. It handed a fresh excuse to the man who owned one. Time to interrogate him. His name is Rudolf Havenstein, head of the Reichsbank since 1908. A career Prussian lawyer, not an economist. By all accounts, honest, dutiful, tireless, which is exactly what makes him tragic. Havenstein believes the inflation comes from outside, the reparations, the collapsing exchange rate. So the bank's duty, in his mind, is simply to print enough money to keep up with the new prices. Prices rise, so he prints more, so prices rise. In July 1922, with inflation past 100% a year, his bank still lends at 5%, so anyone can borrow marks, buy something real, and repay in confetti. Your life under him, autumn 1923. You are paid twice a day now. At noon, families wait at the factory gates, load the morning wages into suitcases and wheelbarrows, and sprint to the shops before the afternoon prices land. A story everyone told. Probably a legend, but it captures the moment. A wheelbarrow of cash, left outside a shop. The thief dumps the money and steals the wheelbarrow. At the peak, prices double roughly every 3 to 4 days. More than 130 private printing firms and 30 paper mills now work for the Reichsbank. Still not enough, so towns and companies print their own emergency money. Banknotes become wallpaper, children's building blocks, kindling. People say burning money is cheaper than buying firewood. Havenstein is printing his currency to death with a clear conscience. But while your world burns, someone is warming his hands on it. The ugly secret of 1923. Hyperinflation was not a flood that drowned everyone equally. It was a transfer. Whoever owed money won. The debts dissolved. The biggest debtor of all was the German state, whose internal war debt simply evaporated. Whoever owned real things, land, factories, machines, won. And nobody won bigger than Hugo Stinnes. Stinnes borrowed paper marks by the wagon load, bought mines, mills, newspapers, and ships, then repaid the loans in currency that had meanwhile turned to confetti. Germans called him the Inflation King. At his death in April 1924, his empire spans some 4,500 companies. And the losers? Look in the mirror. Those war bonds you bought in 1914 are honored to the letter, in marks that will not buy a postage stamp. The savers, the pensioners, the careful middle-class families who did everything right are wiped out, while borrowers and speculators walk away rich. That wound does not heal in 1923. Hold on to it. It matters at the end of this story. So is Stinnes our killer? No. He is the man looting the corpse. To find the killer, watch The Cure. It will tell you what the disease was. The Cure begins in late September 1923, when the new Chancellor, Gustav Stresemann, in office barely 6 weeks, faces reality and calls off the resistance in the Ruhr. Half the country hates him for it. Then, on November 8th and 9th, in Munich, an agitator named Adolf Hitler fires a pistol into a beer hall ceiling, proclaims a national revolution, and marches some 2,000 men into the city, where police stop them within hours. Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. Because 6 days later, on November 15th, the real revolution arrives, made of paper, a new currency, the Rentenmark. What backs it? Not gold. There is not enough. Officially, a mortgage on all of Germany's farmland and industry. And yet, it works. One Rentenmark trades for 1 trillion old paper marks, and the dollar is fixed at 4.2 Rentenmarks, exactly its 1914 value, a deliberate nod to a lost world. Crucially, the new money is strictly capped, and the bank is forbidden to print for the government's deficits. The man running it, Hjalmar Schacht, works, by his own account, out of a converted broom closet with 1 secretary. Within weeks comes what Germans call the miracle. Prices stop climbing, goods reappear in shop windows, farmers accept banknotes again. The fine print is brutal: mass layoffs, scarce credit, and a wave of bankruptcies that soon swallows the Stinnes empire, a machine that only ran on burning money. And Havenstein? He dies of a heart attack on November 20th, 1923, the very day the old mark's exchange rate is fixed for the last time. The man and his currency stop on the same day, which leaves the question the case file cannot close. Who, in the end, actually killed the mark? The verdict, then. Who killed the mark? The war that loaded the gun. The treaty that squeezed the trigger. The assassins who shattered confidence. The occupation that demanded a firestorm. The banker who believed printing was his duty. The speculators who bet against their own money. Nobody killed it with a single blow. A currency dies when everyone stops believing in it. And everyone, one by one, stopped. Now, about that beer hall. Hitler is sentenced to 5 years for treason, serves about 9 months, and uses them to write a book. Here is what most retellings get wrong. Hyperinflation did not put him in power. In the 1928 elections, his party polled under 3%. The breakthrough came in the early 1930s, during the opposite disease: deflation, austerity, and mass unemployment in the Great Depression. What 1923 did was slower and quieter. It ruined the middle class. Remember that wound? Humiliated the Republic and taught millions that the rules could betray them. A trauma on a timer, not a trigger. One last twist. The Rentenmark that saved Germany was backed by a mortgage nobody could ever collect. It was belief, printed on paper. The thing that died in the old mark is the very thing that brought the new one to life. Money, it turns out, is a story a country tells itself. And 1923 is what happens when a country stops mid-sentence. Next time, we go somewhere the money is solid gold, and being rich is still a nightmare. Ancient Rome, where a great fortune could get you taxed, shaken down, or executed by an emperor who wanted your estate. Subscribe. And until then, try to look poor.